In this the psychic is awake and can describe events as they appear to them. On the other hand, in astral projection, the person, or should I say the consciousness, is out of the body to the extent that it is inert or asleep. In the second paragraph, we see we are not restricted to the near physical of the astral plane when we leave the body. But the farther divorced from it we go, the more disoriented we may become based on our advancement. In these more advanced areas, forms may not be the predominant factor as it is stated. We may or may not have one, but the ego consciousness that we are, that part of us that interacts with this physical reality, is used to form. It is no wonder there would be disorientation. It appears that emotions and thoughts are the predominant aspect of these further realities. But even here we see that they can create form. This again is the metaphysical concept of the creation of form. But within these realities, it appears without the delay of time. When we created our blue ball, we saw into these other realities. So it is not so far divorced from normal human activity as some like to think. The last part of what Seth had to say has the idea of perception in it. The image may or may not be perceived, but what determines this? I would say the answer of who could perceive it. In many cases, a psychic may perceive some impression of this, and there are many references to the psychic ability of second sight, astral sight, ESP, and such. This aspect of a psychic may explain a lot of these ESP phenomena. If indeed they can see the astral reality, then it would be no wonder that they may read thoughts. But not what is in our heads, but what we project into the reality of thought. In this, our blue ball could easily be perceived and interpreted, but interpretation of it is another matter. For those of you that think that psychic powers are a gift for only certain people, I would like to remind you that you perceived the blue ball we created. You may say that was just your imagination, but this is the same mechanism used by many psychics. It may be that you believe your imagination is only in your head, and therefore a closed universe. But, by what we have seen, the blue ball we created, metaphysically, did have validity on the level of thought, and you could perceive it, even manipulate it. It is a matter of opening that perception up to those things that you did not create and may be within your awareness. When we looked at the environment of Seth's existence, we found references to being out of time as we understand it. Although there are some aspects of that within this astral reality, it is not predominant. As we looked at our blue ball, time reference stayed the same. If you ventured further away from our physical reality, time becomes more abstract, such as in dreams or other levels of consciousness that are divorced from the ego three-dimensional consciousness. There are two other levels from the other side, as I put it, we as humans have had some experience with. One is very common and experienced by most people to some degree. This is the dream reality. The other is far more rare but leads to astounding change. The area is of near-death experience, NDEs. Many cases of NDEs start from what the person describes as an OBE, then proceeds from there. I will give a short version of an NDE and what most people experience. In short, almost all NDEs have some things in common. First, there is some event that causes the body to die. From here the individual may find themselves out of the body, floating and watching the event from there. Next is a sensation of movement and darkness, a tunnel. In some cases, the tunnel is experienced before the OBE. They are heading to a bright light, most often yellowish in color, and on passing into this light are in another reality. There is a feeling of total love and other sensations of some greatness, of caring. There are often others there at this point, deceased loved ones or guides, to meet you and help. Many people describe a wonderfully beautiful place. At some point, a review of the life you just lived is gone through. There are few that go past this point, but some describe their impressions of God or other events. It is because it is a NDE that we have these accounts, so of course they had to come back to the body. In many cases, there was a significant amount of time distortion. As a major example, these persons are able to relive their entire lives with amazing clarity before coming back. There are many books about this subject available. if you wish to do further studies, most with light within the title, such as Closer to the Light. Now let us look at the dream level of reality. Many people can attest to its out-of-time aspect, and for some time it was believed that a dream could take only a few seconds of our time, where the dream went through much more time. Many have dreamed of being in other times entirely, or the passage of a whole history of events. Studies in lucid dreaming have shown that the dream time is the same as waking time by means of signaling through the eye movement. What I would point out in this, however, is that the lucid dream state is one of a waking awareness consciousness, and this factor alone may make the aspects of time conform more to the physical three-dimensional world. But in the absence of consciousness as we perceive from this waking ego state, time is not the same. The fact that we go to sleep and have no recollection of time till we wake is a strong case for what I am trying to show. The dream state is one of the natural doorways we have into these other realities that we have been looking at, and it is something each and every reader is required to do, even at the level of existing in this physical reality. Seth says a lot about dreams and what goes on during them, as well as other levels of consciousness and reality. Some we will go into later, but now we are looking at the other side. Here is just a bit of what Seth has to say about dreams. Seth Speaks, Session 570. Quote, "Somewhere during this time he will go into a deeply protected area of sleep, where he is at the threshold to other layers of reality and probabilities. At this point, his experience will be out of all context of time as you know it. He may experience years, though only minutes have passed. He will then return towards physical reality in an area marked as REM, sleep, by your scientists, where physically oriented dream production will be created, putting the knowledge he has gained into use." End quote. From what we have seen of these other realities, we find the aspect of being outside of our normal time reference as we understand it in this physical reality. From science, we look at time in movement. We can base it on a reference point that seems consistent, such as the speed of light. But even here, we find that time varies. It was established that time moves slower the closer you are to a gravitational field, or the faster you go. Say as if a spaceship were to come close to the speed of light. So what makes up time? On the physical level, where we are focused now through the brain, it is the structure of matter itself. It takes a certain amount of time for an electron to move from one point A to point B, and it is limited in this movement, so it can never go faster than light. It is these electrons that are responsible for the electrochemical reaction taking place within our bodies, and that process is how we interpret time. To a being without this chemical function and limit, time is abstract. So to function in this physical reality, we set up rules we can agree upon within it. This is what Seth calls root assumptions. Seth Speaks, Session 519. Quote, "When I enter your system, I move through a series of mental and psychic events. You would interpret these events as space and time, and so often I must use the terms, for I must use your language rather than my own. Root assumptions are those built-in ideas of reality of which I have spoken, those agreed upon which you base your ideas of existence. Space and time, for example, are root assumptions. Each system of reality has its own set of such agreements. When I communicate within your system, I must use and understand root assumptions upon which it is based." Break. End quote. It seems interesting to me that these two root assumptions have in common that which we have trouble comprehending: infinity. They always seem to be linked together, even by our scientists. The fact is, we don't know too much about what space is. The simple answer that it is nothing, just the distance between objects, has some problems. When we add the complications of warping space, as in the theory of relativity, this definition breaks down. It also amuses me at how much philosophy has conjectured upon these two aspects. We have covered a lot on the aspects of time from the other side. So how does space fit in? Most physicists will tell you that space and distance are irrelevant within the aspects of ESP. We have already seen some of the things Seth has said about space in our look at time. Here is just a bit more on space, and we will see more come up later in this book. Seth Speaks, session 519. Break, quote. But in a very real manner, space as you perceive it simply does not exist. Not only is the illusion of space caused by your own physical perceptive mechanisms, but it is also caused by mental patterns that you have accepted, patterns that are adopted by consciousness when it reaches a certain stage of evolution within your system. End quote. We again see it is perception that gives us the impression of space. You will see more correlation between space and the levels of reality we are perceiving, so I will not go too deeply into it here. I will end this chapter with something for you to ponder over. What else should a philosophy book induce if not deep thinking? A friend of mine, also of a scientific mind, and me, got into some discussion of the shape of the universe. In cosmology, at present, the accepted theory is that the universe was created at a point in time around 15 billion years ago with the Big Bang and is still expanding. I hold the idea that the universe has no shape because it is an infinity. My friend has the position that it does have shape, perhaps roughly spherical, based upon his argument on the aspects that the universe was defined by what was in it. Therefore, where the first light wave has not yet expanded into is not in the universe yet. I can see his point of view, and by definition he holds it is valid enough. What that's led me to speculate on other dimensional universal shapes and pose the question. If I was dreaming and asked the question, what is the shape of the universe? It would be infinite as well. This is the view I hold of this universe that we live in now. What do you think? Are the answers you have for the physical universe the same for your dream universe?